So this past weekend was probably one of the better NFL weekends I think there's been in a very long time, just because of all the crazy things that went down. So many different games to discuss, so many wild finishes from Saturday to Sunday. And I don't know about you guys, but I love having NFL games on Saturday, so that way I can sit down and watch 3 games Saturday, 3 games Sunday. You get to embrace even more of what's happening on the weekend for the NFL games. But I want to go in here and discuss some of the biggest games from this past weekend because they were most of the games were very entertaining. And so if we start off on Saturday, the first game, the Colts come in. They're up 33-0 in the first half. And I think I tweeted something like, the Vikings are going to lose their first playoff game. I don't see how they're going to, survive the playoffs when they've had so many close games. And then they come in the second half and Kirk Cousins leads the largest comeback in NFL history. And after this game, I'm now thinking to myself, I know the Vikings haven't really won lots of their games in a very convincing fashion when it comes to, winning by, 2-3 scores, really looking dominant. So many of their games have been 1-score wins. But at the same time, I think when you look at these NFL teams, when they enter the playoffs, there's so much, many of the games will come down to the final possession. And when you have a team that has already experienced so many close games, they've been in those spots, I think that gives them that much better of a chance. They sort of believe in themselves. They believe in what they've done because they've done it all year. The Vikings, all season long, even though it's been by a small margin, they've found a way to win. And so I think that is pretty valuable. And if they wouldn't have responded the way they did against the Colts, I think I would be sitting here saying, I just don't know if the Vikings, have a chance to really make it far in the playoffs. After seeing the way they responded after being down 33-0, you have to give props to the Minnesota Vikings. And this is coming from a Green Bay Packers fan. And the Vikings just won the NFC North. So it's unfortunate for me as a Packers fan, but the Vikings have to be very proud of themselves. The fact that they didn't give up, they kept fighting. Kirk Cousins came in there, had an incredible second half. The defense really shut down the Colts after struggling in the first half. So the Vikings are in a very solid position after winning the NFC North, and the Colts, on the other hand, with Jeff Saturday, how do you blow a 33? How are you up 33 points and you somehow blow that lead? It's just wild. So props to the Vikings. While I don't think they are the best team in the NFL or even up there, maybe top 5, I think that they have some grit and they've shown they can do it. And in the playoffs, that's what you need. So maybe that will, help them when they get to that point. Then the next game to discuss is the Bills-Dolphins game. And that was an incredible game just because you're in Buffalo. Near the end of the game, it starts snowing. It's like perfect December football weather. You got Josh Allen. You got the Dolphins, toe-to-toe. Incredible game. And Josh Allen comes in the end, leads the drive, and the Bills are able to win that game 32-29. But I think when you look at this game, we saw, the Dolphins in the past couple weeks had struggled. They went through I'd say a down stretch, but they came in here against one of the best, if not the best teams in football in the Buffalo Bills, hung with them the entire game. They were able to rely on the run, ran the ball very well against a, solid Buffalo Bills front. Tua played very great, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, controlled the ball well. Jalen Waddle had a great game. Tyreek Hill, got open at times. And I think that sort of shows that when the playoffs come around, you can't really sleep on the Dolphins. Yes, they at times can struggle, but when you look at the way that they stayed in that game the entire game, with the Buffalo Bills, with Josh Allen, the way they sort of showed up, even though they lost the game to the Bills, I think that, the Dolphins have a solid chance come playoff time. And it's crazy looking around the NFL because there's so many really good teams that, any Sunday could come in and win a game. I mean, you have so many incredible quarterbacks. You got Josh Allen, you got Herbert, you got Patrick Mahomes, you got Tua, who's even playing great recently with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle now in that offense. And so that was a very exciting game. Josh Allen does what he does best, came in there, final drive, clutched it up, and led the Bills to a win. So that was a very great game as well. Then here's a game that ended in a crazy fashion, one of the first, and then we'll get to some other ones, is the Jaguars beating the Dallas Cowboys with a pick 6 in overtime. And I was watching this game here with my friend Tim, who is a Cowboys fan, and when that moment happened, I'm sitting there watching the game, it's overtime. The ball bounces off of the Cowboys player, whoever it was, and the Jaguars pick it off, and he just runs it. You see, there's no one in front of him, and I'm just sitting there like this. I was trying to not be like, oh my goodness, because, you have a fan next to you who's sort of in pain. And so I was like, I couldn't believe that the Jaguars somehow came back and won that game after being down 17. And so that was a wild finish, but I think one thing to take away from that game is Trevor Lawrence is starting to play as one of the best QBs in the NFL. You know, he's playing up there right now. You look at his past 5 or 6 games, his stats are crazy. He came back in this game down 17. The Cowboys have a really good defense. They have had some injuries, but Trevor Lawrence came in, and I think when you see him now, being in his second season after having the crazy year with Urban Meyer, he started to, pick things up. Having Doug Peterson over there, the Jaguars have started to actually look like a legit team, especially these past few weeks, and beating the Dallas Cowboys, who I think have been, one of the better teams in the NFL so far this season. But if you are the Dallas Cowboys, after barely winning a close game against the Texans last week, which the Chiefs did it as well, so the Texans actually have some fight in them, even though they only have 1 win. But the Cowboys, I'm just not so sure on the Cowboys and their chances because, yes, they've had some games of domination. They beat the Vikings by, 40 points or 30-something points. But I feel like any Sunday, the Cowboys could just lose a game. I mean, they're up 17. They lose to the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence. And so I think come playoff time, the Cowboys now, I just don't know if you can trust them. If you're a Cowboys fan, I'd be a little nervous because they at times can just sort of fall apart as they did in that game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And right now, with the Eagles winning against the Bears, the Cowboys losing, it looks like the Cowboys will likely not win the NFC East. It's still possible, but given the Eagles right now only with 1 loss, the Cowboys now with 4 losses now for the Cowboys, I believe, or is it 3? I think it's 4. It's going to be tough for them to win that division, but they should probably have the top wildcard spot in the NFL. And then here's probably the craziest game of the day, one of the craziest plays of all time, and that's the Patriots losing to the Las Vegas Raiders. And I was watching that game partly because I have Ramondre Stevenson on my fantasy team. I'm in the fantasy playoffs, and I was like, okay, let's see if Ramondre can maybe get some more yards. And I was excited to see them hand it off to Ramondre on the final play of the game, maybe get me a few points. He runs 20, 30 yards. He tosses it back, and I'm like, okay, they're going to do one toss. And then Jacoby Myers, what was he thinking? I don't think he was thinking. He just chunks it, trying to throw it to Mac Jones. Chandler Jones jumps up, grabs the ball, and runs it the other way. And you're just sitting there watching like, am I dreaming? Is this happening? Did that really happen? How can you make such a poor decision in that moment? And that was, one of the wildest finishes of all time. And apparently that wasn't what Bill Belichick's, the Patriots schemed up. Apparently it was supposed to just be a draw. Ramondre Stevenson decides it's a good idea to toss it back. And then I guess in that same spirit, when Ramondre does that, Jacoby's like, oh, I guess we're going for it. And he just chunks it. He's like, let's just try to win this game. Let's throw it to Mac Jones. If Mac Jones gets it, maybe he could run, how far, 70 yards, 60 yards? That probably wouldn't happen. So Jacoby Myers, probably right now is sitting there kicking himself, thinking, why did I do that? Because, probably the second he threw that ball, he thought to himself, what am I doing? That was a poor decision because if they just would have gone down, they would have had a chance in overtime to beat the Raiders, who almost gave up. I think they were up, 14 or 17, and the Raiders have blown so many leads this year. But the Raiders got a gift from Jacoby Myers. Chandler Jones was in a good position, and I was reading an article this morning, and apparently, the way they're coached, the Raiders are, on those kind of situations to find the guy farthest back, get in front of him in case they do try to pitch it. He was doing that. He read it perfectly, caught it. Stiff arms Mac Jones. If you guys saw that picture, I've seen some memes from it now as well, but stiff arms Mac Jones and runs it in for one of the craziest finishes probably in the entire NFL season and one of the most absurd plays maybe all time, honestly. I feel like that has to be up there in, top 10 worst plays of all time. Maybe even be top 5, top 3. Who knows? But it was a crazy game, and now the Patriots are sitting here, and I think their playoff chances, if you look at the percentage that they show up there, it went from 40 or 60 to 20 because of that after that loss. So tough game for the Patriots. And I think of the Patriots right now, their offense is just so stagnant. They can't push the ball down the field whatsoever. I think they average 3 or 4 yards per play. Mac Jones just can't push the ball down the field. And honestly, part of me wonders if Bailey Zappi would be a better option there in New England for the Patriots, because you look at his stats, I think he averages 8.5 yards per attempt in the games this year. Mac Jones is more 5 or 6. Mac Jones just can't push the ball down the field, and I feel like in the games that Bailey Zappi played, yes, he had some moments where he threw some picks, But I would rather, a guy throw an occasional interception than a guy not be able to really push the ball down the field consistently. And I think if you're the Patriots, you may have to be contemplating moving to Bailey Zappi. I don't even know if that's an option for them right now, if they're really thinking on that, but I think it would be smart because Mac Jones just hasn't really been able to push the ball down the field, and the offense has just been very stagnant. So those are lots of the craziest games. I'd say one of the other ones was Joe Burrow coming back against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The first half, the Buccaneers were in complete control. The defense was playing great. They were getting pressure on Joe Burrow. Tom Brady was moving the ball. But then the second half, Burrow comes in, wins the game. And I think when you look at Joe Burrow, he really just has that. He has that it factor. When he's down 14, 17, whatever it may be, he never gives up. He never stops fighting. He really believes in himself. And honestly, I think he may end up in the Super Bowl once again just because he has that it factor. Similar to Tom Brady, he can just pull it off in the end. And he stays calm under pressure no matter what the score is. He can come back. And you look at the Bengals as well, to have Jamar Chase back, all the weapons they have on offense. I really think that the Bengals could, make a push for the Super Bowl once again. There are lots of tough teams in the AFC though, so he has to get past Mahomes, which he's done before, Josh Allen, maybe Lamar, depending on if he gets healthy, who knows. But so many talented quarterbacks on that side, but in the NFL in general. And then to one thing to end it off, the Lions keep their winning streak alive, or not a streak, but they've won a lot of their last 6 or 7 games. After starting 1-6, they're now 7-7. So the Lions have been incredible. It's crazy to see what they've done because after starting 1-6, you wouldn't really, I wouldn't have guessed they'd be sitting here at 7-7. And I feel like with Dan Campbell, they have that resiliency. They don't give up. Being 1-6 and now 7-7, they have that fight in them, and they're sort of on a hot streak right now. You look at that offense, they're able to consistently put up a good amount of points. They play with lots of heart, and it's going to be interesting to see how these next few weeks go because the Lions still have a chance to make the playoffs as well. But those are pretty much my thoughts for the crazy NFL Sunday. Packers still have to play tonight, so I'm hoping we can get a win to stay in the playoff, for our playoff hopes to stay alive. But that's all I have for this video. If you guys want to see more NFL content like this, feel free to subscribe to the channel down below. Drop a like on the video. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.